After playing through Deltarune's chapters 3 and 4, which came out recently at the time of recording, I just knew I had to dive back into the game that got me started on this path in the first place, that being Undertale. Now, I was a fan pretty much from the word go. I think I was playing the game within a month of the game launching, because a friend at the time had recommended it to me, and I have never regretted that since, as I had always listed Undertale as one of my easily top 10 favourite games of all time. But playing Deltarune and all of its little creature comforts did make me worried. Would Undertale really stand up after Deltarune seems to have refined so much of the gaming experience? I mean, a lot of people point out that Undertale was essentially just the testing game for Deltarune. Would it actually not look as good to me anymore? For this review, I actually played through both the neutral route, which is the route you have to play at the beginning of the game, the pacifist route, and I got as far as I could in the hard mode, which wasn't very far, but there we go. And I can say without a doubt that this game still is such an exceptional experience. Sure, you absolutely can see some of the little ways that it's a bit more rough around the edges compared to Deltarune, but the core experience is still there. The bullet patterns that you have to dodge from opponents is still extremely creative in their own little ways, and the main gameplay loop of sparing creatures still holds firm. Even if there's less going on to spice up the experience, the actual core gameplay is still there and is still a lot of fun. Visually, while the game definitely does have a bit more funkiness going on, even if we've all come to love Frisk, their sprite is definitely a little funny looking, and there are other examples of this, but I'd say that a lot of the core designs still hold up really well. I mean, we're seeing some of these characters show up in Deltarune with little to no changes, and they still hold up extremely well even in that game. The music goes without saying, but it too is tremendous. It's got some absolutely iconic tracks, and I'm not even talking about Megalovania, though that is very good. Bergen Trucken is one of my favourite video game OST tracks of all time. There's funny little tracks such as the Temi Village. There's parts of the track that accompany the story so perfectly that can bring a tear to my eye, though we'll get into that in a moment. One thing that I definitely really wish Undertale would have, though, is a run button. That's one aspect in the gameplay department that can be just a bit tedious. When I finished the pacifist route, I decided to finally go through the entire map to see Azrael, and let me tell you, having to go all the way there and then all the way back just to get to the ending, wow, was I begging for a run button. The fact that some of Deltarune not only has a run button, but these doors to fast travel is something that I was sorely missing here. The characters in this game are, of course, a lot of fun. One thing that I have noted when it comes to the difference between, say, Undertale and Deltarune is that it feels like when it comes to Deltarune, there's a lot of forethought put into making sure that while the designs are still fun and zany, yes, they typically are made to better fit within the chapter's respective dark world. You end up in the computer world, and of course, it's going to be filled with computer-related and maybe even tech-related, enemies and characters. Whereas Undertale definitely has a bit more of a mismatched energy. I mean, you end up seeing stuff like a seahorse-looking thing with biceps. You got Temi, of course. You've got stuff like the Monster Kid. You've got Woshua, Shiren, Tsundere plane, literally a tsundere plane. It's all completely all over the place, and it often feels like Toby and the team were all just thinking, haha, wouldn't it be funny to put this in the game? But I think that it lends to what Undertale's charm was. As Undertale definitely has a bit more of a surreal energy compared to Deltarune, I think having such wildly different designs actually is a pro for Undertale rather than something that's working against them. Another thing that's a huge strength for Undertale's gameplay is that there is so many choices you can make. It and Deltarune are leagues apart in the way that they do things. Deltarune has clearly got a set vision in mind, and Undertale focuses on all the different things you can do and has so many contingencies, little details that can change depending on the choices you make, even small ones. There's a snowman, for instance, early on in the game that asks you to take a piece of it as far as you can, and if you do, when you finish the neutral route and talk to Sans will actually bring up that you made a snowman very happy. And it's like, all these little things, because there are so many of these. I remember that it felt like for a good few years, Undertale fans were combing through the game bit by bit to find every tiny interaction that you could find. Some of them were randomized, so you weren't even guaranteed if you were going to see it or not. So when you did, it would throw you completely by surprise. And there's other stuff that actually genuinely affects the gameplay as well. For instance, spoiler alert, there's a spider sail at the beginning of the game in the ruins. If you do decide to buy a spider donut from them, hold on to that, and when you reach Muffet, eat that on the first turn, and you'll skip the boss battle entirely, because Muffet will receive a telegram showing that you actually did support the spiders, and Muffet, well, she clearly must have misheard, and so she'll spare you and let you leave. Another one, when you take the cinnamon butterscotch pie from Toriel, if you hold on to that until you get to the Asgore fight, that will aid you immensely in the Asgore fight. And it makes sense, given that Asgore still has a lot of love in his heart for Toriel, despite their breakup. And it's those little touches throughout the gameplay that I absolutely adore. Like, I could play the game again and again and again and again, and I feel like I would still be discovering stuff that, well, the Undertale fandom themselves would have figured out years and years ago. To me, keeps the experience fresh and worth replaying. I've replayed this game multiple times at this point, and I still generally have a good time with it. The story itself shifts and molds the longer that you play it. The first playthrough seems fairly obvious. You've fallen into the mountain and you're trying to get out. You end up encountering all these different characters throughout your playthrough: Sans, Papyrus, Metaton, Alphys, Undyne, and so many more, as you either fight or spare them. You're pretty much locked to the neutral route on your first run, so it doesn't really matter what you do at the end of the day. It mainly only affects what your call at the end of the session is going to be like with Sans. But you get to have a little dive into like the lives of the monsters, how they've been trapped in the underground for so long and are desperate to get out. You hear the story about Azriel and their sibling Kara and what happened to them, the tragedy that took both of their lives, and genuinely, this is one of the parts that gets to me. Every time when I'm doing that long walk to get to Asgore in the first playthrough where they're telling me the story, does genuinely, is a bit of a tearjerker for me. Stuff like how some of that desperation caused stuff like the Amalgamates, which is a terrifying prospect all on its own, something that's deeply uncomfortable, especially when you see Snowdrake's mum, who is the only recognizable one of the lot, and God, it is such a depressing moment in that story, and you can see why doing this was eating Alphys up, because holy shit, she really has permanently affected so many people's lives. Keep in mind, it's not just Snowdrake's mum, that's a fusion of so many different monsters that have kind of just clumped together. She's just the one that has maintained the most form of the bunch. And while the other monsters seem to be generally pretty accepting of the whole thing, you can see why it would eat Alphys alive that she caused this. Of course, discovering the tapes in that true lab as well, and getting it to piece together a bit more of the story to do with Kara and Azriel as well is also very interesting, hinting at a more sinister side to Kara. You've got stuff like Metaton, who has been chasing getting his true body, and how you only get little passing references to his relationship, familial or otherwise, with Napstablook. There's so much little bits of detail in the characters and interactions in the story that has kept Undertale fans fed for nearly a decade now. And that's ultimately what does it for me. Sure, I could complain that the gameplay doesn't have as much going on as the exciting Deltarune fight system. Sure, Deltarune has better graphics, but the gameplay is still good. The graphics are perfectly fine at giving off that surreal energy that Undertale has. The music is so many times isn't just great, it's some of the best video game music I've ever heard, and I've listened to a lot of video game soundtracks. The music to this day is one that I'd still rank as one of my favourites of all time. And with characters and stories throughout the game that genuinely really touched me in a way that, to this very day, no game, not even Deltarune, has yet been able to do. Undertale, without a doubt in my mind, is still a top 10 favourite game of all time. Deltarune definitely has the possibility of one day superseding it, and it's had some great moments itself, but Undertale has managed to touch me in a way that makes it truly special in my mind. Obviously, it goes without saying, this gets a hearty recommendation. There are multiple playthroughs that you can do. You can play the neutral route, which you have to do on your first playthrough. You can do the pacifist route. You can do the genocide route, though I wouldn't recommend it. From the brief time that I played it once, it was extremely unfun, though that does seem to be by design. And it is also extremely difficult. I think I got as far as Undyne, and then I realized, oh, I am going to be here way too long, and I don't really want to do this for an ending that I know I won't like. And there's the secret hard mode as well. Not to mention, of course, you can play through Pacifist after getting the genocide route, but I'll spoil that one for you. Doing the genocide route ruins your save game, so if you do get the Pacifist route, it will permanently ruin any... So once you do that, it'll permanently ruin any Pacifist ending you ever get. Which kind of makes me glad that I never finished the genocide route myself. That, coupled with seemingly infinite amounts of dialogue, referencing past playthroughs that you've done, and all the little interactions that you can have throughout the game. Genuinely, if you've been enjoying Deltarune but somehow haven't played Undertale yet, I'd really recommend playing it right now, actually. Get it as soon as you can, because it is a great way to hold yourself over until the next chapter releases.